up? It's Way Up with Angela Yee. I'm Angela Yee, and I like to say this is my friend because she really is. Latham Thomas is here. And we've had her on the show before, Mama Glow Foundation, the Soft Space, which has opened recently. So let's talk about everything that you have going on right now, because Black Maternal Health Week is April 11th to the 17th.
That's right.
And so I want to make sure that we have, so many things that we need to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. Starting with Black Maternal Health Week, this year's theme is our bodies still belong to us, which is really important as we think about reproductive justice. We think about the attack on reproductive rights in this country,
right,
and how it disproportionately affects Black women more specifically if we don't have access to abortion. So that's one piece of it. And when we think about Black maternal health, people really focus obviously on birth, which is important because, as we know, Black women are more likely to die during childbirth and due to childbirth-related causes. When we think about white women and Black women in this country, Black women are 3 times more likely to die. But at the same time, when we look at the access to healthcare more generally and our reproductive healthcare, when we have an attack on reproductive rights, it really impacts us first, right? And the most. And so this year's theme is really about thinking about reproductive health more broadly, right? And thinking about the options that we have for care and innovative solutions that we can make to bridge those gaps.
Oh, Latham, I'm so glad you brought that up first, because I want to talk about this narrative that Black women are murdering their babies, and that there is this really false narrative that people have that, Black women are the ones who are having abortions, and
actually, more white women have them than we do.
Right, which people don't talk about. Yes.
Yeah, and also statistically speaking, more coupled people have abortions than single people.
Right.
So
it's family
families,
planning.
Right? So a lot of families will have children already and then decide they can't have a baby, and then they will plan for abortion. So that's what the data shows. So it's not actually unwed or promiscuous people running the streets or women of the night, the ways that people like to sort of frame it. Abortions, there's not one type of person who has an abortion. If you think about it, I like to think about it in this way. An abortion is a choice that you make at a particular time in your life. And so any person might have to face that decision, right? Depending on what access you have, what sort of resources that you have available to you, but also what choices you have. And in a country where we don't have, social services lined up for people, we don't have a safety net, people don't have insurance guarantee, people don't have healthcare guarantee, people don't have education guaranteed, housing. There's all kinds of issues that really frame what reproductive justice entails, and also what our healthcare outcomes can look like. It's really important, right, to have this discussion around what it really looks like, what people are really facing as we think about this issue. It's not just one type of person.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for people to understand that too, because, I think that it is terrible to frame things in a way like women don't know what we want to do and we're being forced to do things. And I also feel like depending on your financial circumstance, you'll always have access. So if it's harder for you to have access to have an abortion, then you have to leave, you have to get a flight, you have to have somebody come with you, take care of you, find a place to stay for the night. That's going to be hard. But if you have money and you have access, you will still be able to travel, go do what you, or go see a private doctor and make it happen and have access in that way. So for a lot of reasons, this is also a financial burden for people.
It's a huge financial burden. I think the thing to think about too is these safe harbor states, like New York is one of them. People travel here. Like you said, it is expensive. People need logistical support to get here. There are a lot of organizations that help people with that, especially if they're in states where there's bans or laws that are really draconian that make it impossible for them to get care. But if you think about it, it's like just thinking about the stress of, wanting something to go away, like a problem that you might have and something that seems insurmountable. Then also on top of that, having to jump through these hoops, figuring out the travel, figuring out if your kids at home, care for them, thinking about also having to keep it secret because in some states, people can report you and they can go to jail, you can go to jail. So making this a criminalized issue versus a private issue between you and your doctor has made it impossible for people to keep themselves safe, but also it means that we're not having less abortions. We're just making it unsafe for people to continue to have abortions.
And even with IVF, that's another thing as we talk about our bodies and family planning that's under attack as well. It's so interesting. So they want you to have the baby, but they also don't want people who want to have babies to have more access to be able to have babies.
Right. And then they want your embryos to be full-fledged humans, which is insane. But
so
then when
that
the
means
baby
child support for an embryo?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So like we have to think about everything. We have to consider what that means.
Who's making these decisions when we say...
Girl, people who don't have this anatomy.
Yeah.
Like people
That's
who
the
don't
craziest
even...
part.
Right. It's like men in panels, you know, making up rules about our bodies that are restrictive and never thinking about like what this actually looks like in the wild, what this actually looks like in play. These laws that they put in place, these bans that they put in place, what does it look like in action, right? And so you see a lot of issues where, I don't know if you saw the case where the woman went to the doctor, said she had cramping. They sent her home. She ended up passing a miscarriage in the toilet and then was arrested and criminalized. And thankfully, like, you know, the jury was like, this was an accident. This is traumatizing. A miscarriage is not murder. And so, again, but they're making it so that, like, any health issue could be considered, like, you know, a crime.
And imagine having a miscarriage. That's already difficult enough.
And traumatizing enough.
And now I'm being charged with a crime, and I have to deal with this.
Yeah. It's like what's that show that people, you know, The Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, yes.
Remember when that was out? We were like, this is wild. Now we're like, we're living this.
Have babies.
Yeah. Now we're like living it. So, but yeah, we need to get to a place where we are continuing to make sure that there are protections in place. One of the things I think is also important in this time is that if people are navigating care, if it's abortion care, for instance, too, you can have a doula for that. There are abortion doulas who support people.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So it's the same kind of thing. Like if you were having that support during childbirth and in the postpartum period, you would also have somebody, you know, to hold your hand as you go through that process, to go with you to the appointment, to go with you after you leave, to provide logistical support, but then also sort of the recovery support and the healing, including physical and psychological healing that needs to take place.
It's never an easy decision for somebody to have to make.
And abortion is still birth, right? And so what happens is that your body still undergoes, you know, the same processes afterwards as it would if you were having a baby, right? And so it has to recover. And there's a lot that happens that we don't consider that takes a lot emotionally out of people. So having that support can be also very helpful.
And a lot more people are using the medication, the medically induced abortions as well, where you can take the pills and do it at home, right?
Doing it at home, which I think for a lot of people, if you think about it, rather than going into a clinic, there's something more psychologically that feels just a little bit less stressful and like more humane about doing it that way at home and the privacy of your own home. It's very safe, but they're also coming for the pills, right? So we see a lot of legislation coming down now to ban the pills. And so I think every solution that's happening is important and incredible, and we have to protect.
All right, well, let's talk about the soft space, because clearly after we talk about all of these things, there is a reason for you opening this place in Williamsburg. And incredibly enough, you actually had done meditation there prior to even acquiring the space. So can you talk to me about what the soft space is and how you went into business to be able to have a place for people to be able to come? Because we need a soft space.
We do need a soft place to land, right? It's our soft era, y'all. So come join us. Yes. So you know what it was? Like after coming out of 2020, where we were in the house for like 2 years and being away from people. And I feel like people being in space together, that connectivity is what makes us really human, right? And so losing that for so long, it was important to me to create a space where we could come together, where people could be in community, but also where we could bring programming that I love and that I feel like is helpful, but also like really needed in our community. And so, funny story that you should mention, in 2017, I led a meditation in the space. And at the time it was a meditation studio. After that, it became a dance studio. And then it was like a wine distribution center. And so, which makes sense, right? But which makes sense because if you think about what was happening the last couple of years, people were drinking, right? So they had expanded into that space. And then it was empty. And I discovered it in the summer being empty. And I was like, whoa. And we found out, contacted my realtor, was like, yo, there's a space, like you have to find out who owns it. He got the info right away. And from there, it was like connecting with the landlord and just, you know, I had a vision, you know, when of what to do. But in 2017, when I was there, I was like, I would love to have a space like this one day. And so here we are finally in this beautiful space. It's 2,300 square feet. It's like this wellness oasis. It's beautifully designed. We have like a retail area where we sell products, but also can shelf any products from people in the community. We have like a herbal kitchen apothecary where we have like herbs and we can make tonics and teas and stuff for people. We have a library that has a lot of amazing books from like literary ancestors and contemporaries and stuff. And then we have this sanctuary, which is this beautiful space. It looks onto like a window garden that's landscaped, and there's like skylights that are amazing, and just light pours in. It's so beautiful, so zen, and so relaxing to be there. We also have a treatment room upstairs and downstairs, which is for spaces for things like Reiki or massage therapy, or people come do tarot and things like that. And so I love this space. It's like really fun to hang out in. But aside from programming, people do rentals. So we've had different types of events happen there, retreats and things like that, as well as programming with some of the partners that we work with. Like CVS Health came and did a retreat for their women's health team that they flew in from across the country. So things like that, where we can curate programming. And then also there's things for the public to come to. Like we have sometimes dance classes. We have classes in programming for parents.
This sounds absolutely amazing. I just want to say, and for you to be able to run this space, that's not an easy thing.
Yeah, thankfully I have a girl who does the programming, and she's amazing. That's
what we all need, somebody that thankfully can work with us.
To get it together. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And now you also are hosting a Black Maternal Health Week mixer.
Yes.
So all right, so talk to me
April
about that
11th.
because so everybody's welcome to this?
Anybody can come.
Okay.
Anybody and everybody can come. It is a way for you to see the space if you haven't been yet. We're one stop into Brooklyn on the L train at Bedford Avenue and 1 block from the station. So you walk around the corner with your heels on. No excuse, right? And we're there, and just come meet the team, meet people. I feel like you can meet community members, but also if you're interested in learning about doula training, becoming a doula, having a doula, you can meet amazing doulas there. It'll be a great way to celebrate, like, I feel like all of the wins that we've had in maternal health. And because, this week is really about embracing what work needs to be done, but also celebrating where we've come from and how much we have accomplished, right? And so for us, we like to lean into celebration rather than just focusing on the negative things that are happening, within the maternal health landscape and that impact our community. But like, what else are we doing? How are we solving problems? And also, how are we celebrating like how fly we are, and also how resilient we are in the process?
Well, let's talk about some of those wins since you brought it up. Our Vice President Kamala Harris, this was something that was top and center for her too as she got into office. And that is why it is also important to have women in these spaces and women who represent us in these spaces as well. Because I don't know, and no shade to any men, but I don't know that this would affect them in the same way that it affects us, and therefore not be top of mind.
Exactly. And we don't have as many men championing in the same way. I mean, Senator Cory Booker was really helpful in advancing the Black Maternal Health Omnibus Act. He worked alongside Representative Underwood and really pushed it through. So he was a man who really championed, as well as Raphael Warnock. But there weren't a lot of men. And even still, it's really hard to get things like that pushed through. We're still trying to get the Black Maternal Health Omnibus passed, and only pieces of this. It's like a 13-part bill. And they still can't get it passed, right? Because it's not a priority. It should be a priority. Maternal health should be a priority in this country. It's on the federal agenda, but somehow we just can't get it passed. But there are many things that are happening on the ground in community. For instance, one thing that we're really proud of, we received a HRSA grant in partnership with the Montefiore Medical Center and Bronx Health Collective, where we're studying the impact of doula support on trauma impacted populations in the South Bronx. And so we're working with them on a 2-year study. And then with Northwell Health, we got an NIH grant to bring nurses into our doula training program so that they could actually bring these skills into the workforce.
Great. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so we'll see more of that.
I've heard so many people say, I wish I would have known about doulas when I was, I feel like it has been spreading more, but I've heard so many people say, if I would have known about doulas, I would have definitely hired a doula.
Yeah, it's so crazy because my son's 20, right? And when I was pregnant with him, I was at a birth center and they had like little signs like, hire a doula. And I was like, what's a doula at the time, right? And I understood kind of what they did, but I had a best friend who was going to be at the birth. My son's father was there. I had a midwife. And so I felt, and I was in a birth center on 14th Street. By the way, y'all, this birth center was on 14th Street, right next door, if you used to party, right next door to what used to be Nell's when we were coming up.
Okay.
Then up and down in the Derby.
I remember those.
So you remember those days. Okay, so my son thinks he was born in a nightclub.
He was.
Right, but that's where we used to
Good
party
times.
and had good times, right? And so that's where the place was where he was born. Is shut down. And so now there's no birth centers like that in New York City that are freestanding.
Oh, wow.
And so if you want to do out of hospital birth, for instance, you have the option of birthing in like 2 to 3 places only, which are really hard to get to. Otherwise, in the hospital or at home, you can do home birth. And there's home birth midwives. There's midwives who work within birth centers and then some that work in hospitals, but mostly the pathway is to work within a hospital with a physician, right? With the OBGYN.
Right.
So, but people should know that there are options to explore.
And to have people advocating for you too, which is so important when you're being told, do this, do that. You know, because at the end of the day, when you go to the hospital, they are trying to get those beds ready for other people as quickly as possible.
You recognize it's a business.
Yeah, it is a business. And so it may be, let's schedule this birth. Let's schedule a C-section. Let's do X, Y, and Z when maybe it's not necessary.
That happens a lot, unfortunately. We call it unnecessarians when people get scheduled for non-medical reasons. Typically, a cesarean section would be for a medical event, right? For something that's putting the life of the baby or the mother birthing person in danger. Too often it happens that people are scheduled for C-sections for non-medical events, for non-emergencies. There are situations where health could be impacted. So somebody might do a C-section preemptively because of a health condition that's pending, or because something like, so someone has a history with fibroids and they might have obstructions in the uterus that would make it impossible for a baby to come down. They might have a scheduled C-section. But if you have someone who's like healthy, everything's going fine, and then suddenly they get scheduled for a C-section without like any medical reason, like
Right.
this happens a lot to people, unfortunately. And so it's really important, as you said, to learn how to navigate the medical system, to have an advocate, to hire a doula if you can, and have community to support you, but learn all that you can, because this is not a game. I feel like, you know what, the things that we do really well, right? If it's like a wedding or a party or a car, we're like researching.
Yeah.
Like, why we should do it over here too. Our healthcare is important. Yeah.
And has there been any advancements as far as insurance covering doulas?
Yes. So there's some wins in the insurance area. So Medicaid just announced that they will be onboarding doulas to process Medicaid. To process Medicaid for billing. So if you have a doula and you are Medicaid eligible, the doula can submit that claim and be paid and reimbursed through the state of New York. They're in a trial phase now, so doulas are onboarding to that now. So that's really cool that that's happening here.
Okay.
Another thing that's already in motion is if you are Medicaid eligible and you live in New York City in the 5 boroughs, and you would like a doula, there is a program called the Citywide Doula Initiative, and it is funded by the Fund for Public Health. And the Mama Glow Foundation is the largest provider of pro bono doula services through that program. So if you reach out to us, we can match you with the doula at no cost. And
Amazing.
It's right. And so all boroughs are eligible. And so if you live in any place here, there's certain neighborhoods that are prioritized. So we do need your neighborhood to know, like, if you're in like one of the zones that's impacted and that's on this list. But pretty much every, neighborhood is eligible, and again, Medicaid eligible, right? So if you have those criteria, if you meet those criteria, then you can be eligible for free doula services. Another program that we have that you are familiar with also is called Love Delivered, in partnership with Carol's Daughter and L'Oreal. And so through that program, you can also get access to a doula at no cost if you are a Black family in one of the major cities. The cities are New York, Atlanta, LA, Miami, NOLA and Baton Rouge, and then DC. If you're
That's
in
why
any of those
I love
cities.
seeing you and Lisa Price together.
Yes.
Putting out the Carol's Daughter.
Yes.
You know. Yes, and the Mama Glow Foundation collaboration.
Yes. So reach out if you need a doula. It does not have to be, because not everybody has the money to afford, right, to pay out of pocket, or to pay out of pocket and then seek insurance. And so some insurance is covering. We do have a doula pilot in place with a major, actually one of the largest insurance provider in the country right now. And it's piloting in New York, Georgia. And then we're going to open into another area in the South soon. And once that program moves through piloting, we'll be able to replicate it throughout the country. But right now, it's a benefit for people who are under this insurance company now. So it is happening.
Yeah,
there
and
are a lot of
progress can feel slow.
It can,
but this is going to benefit people
down the line.
Down the line,
exactly.
Right,
which is so key.
Yeah, doing the work right now.
Hey,
and I also want to talk about this. Halle Berry recently did an interview where she talked about feeling like there were razors in her vagina, and then realizing it was a symptom of perimenopause.
Yes,
and I feel like things like that aren't discussed much. You know, discussed much when it comes to menopause, perimenopause, the things that are going to be happening to your body. Those conversations aren't being had enough. Because when she said that, I was like, this sounds, awful. They thought she had herpes.
She thought exactly. She got misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So even our physicians don't even understand what falls under perimenopause in terms of symptoms. And so one of the things that's immediate that people experience is vaginal dryness. And so for her, that's probably what she was experiencing, was severe vaginal dryness, and was probably not told that like there was a combination of hormones that could be used, as well as some topicals and also insertables that she could be using to help with the sensations that she was having. But I feel like we don't have these discussions because, again, if you think about women's health in general, we're not having a lot of discussions we should be having. It's like all those stuff is happening in silos. We're not like sitting around the table and aunties are talking about things and moms and cousins, to where it's like news that we would have like in our, in our back pocket, able to access. These things are happening, like tucked away, but also because people feel ashamed of it. Yeah. And if she would have said that, people would not have known.
Are like, oh my God, me
me
this
too,
is happening
right?
to me too.
Exactly.
And even thinking about fibroids, like up until about 10 years ago, I really didn't hear people talking about fibroids. And it's such a common thing. Yeah,
a lot of women have them. And I think that one of the things too is because doctors would say there's nothing we can do. We can remove them, but there's nothing we can do. A lot of people, as a result of that, then like don't talk about it, right? Because they feel shame because they can't figure out how to address them, how to shrink them, how to, work to reduce them without surgery. A surgery, for some people, that the surgical pathway is the only way. For some people, diet and lifestyle and stress management can reduce the size. And I've seen that, and I've seen it with people.
I've seen it too.
Right? Yeah. So we know people who also have done it.
When you do a fast, you do a detox,
all
you
kinds
change
of
your
work.
diet.
Yes, it can happen. And one thing to think about too, especially in our community, because there's certain foods that we just love, and I understand it, but those are some of the foods that like they're culprit foods when it comes to fibroids. So like really like dairy. Right. And people don't think about like dairy. So if you think about a cow, when a baby calf is born, they're like 75 pounds at birth, right? Like off the rip, 75 pounds. Okay. In a year, they're 500 pounds. Ooh. So think about what they're drinking. Right. It's
That's
actually
not for us.
It's not for us. It's to put on body mass. And so what milk does for baby calves is to build body mass. It's not focused on the things that like we need, which is like more, if you think about like what milk is designed for in infants, like human infants, it has a different fat and fat, protein, and carbohydrate composition, which supports like a growing infant.
Yeah, I was always taught that milk that's for a calf is not for a human.
Yes, exactly.
That's for a baby calf.
Exactly.
You shouldn't be drinking a cow's milk.
We are
but
weaned.
There was such a huge campaign, like milk, it does a body good.
There was such a huge
Got milk. Yeah.
All of that stuff, which really is, if you think about like most of the world population is actually allergic to cow's milk.
Right.
So
that's why we have these lactose intolerance issues.
Exactly. But we'd be doing lactate and this and that. But so if we could just like get rid of things like that, think about also how that would impact our fibroid growth, right? Because again, they grow based on like sugar, based on, dairy, stress, and then lifestyle issues too, like stress management, like not sleeping enough, hydrating enough, but then also like some of the toxins that live in our environment, in our hair care products, skincare, et cetera.
Ooh. And, we talked about breastfeeding just now. That's something also that you guys are focusing on in the soft space and with the Mama Glow Foundation, communities with a low breastfeeding rates. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes. So I'm really excited that we actually just launched a program called the Mama Glow Foundation First Foods Justice Breastfeeding Certification Program, and it's for doulas. And this program is going to train 100 doulas in the community to become community lactation educators. And what that looks like is the training that they're doing is over a 3-week period. It's twice a week, and they have office hours, they have homework, they have tests. And ultimately, they come out of this being able to support people in their community who might be locked out of breastfeeding as a pathway, who might not have had breastfeeding support. Typically speaking, breastfeeding has been undermined historically in our community, but also we have a fraught relationship with breastfeeding because during chattel slavery, our bodies were used to, feed others, right? The master's babies. And then also in Reconstruction, we were working as wet nurses. And wet nurses were literally giving their milk away, and not really being able to charge for it, by the way. And what people don't understand is there was an entire market adjacent to the slave market where people will be sold. There was a secondary market that was just for black milk. Ooh. Right? That was actually run by white women.
Stories we don't hear being told.
And it was run by white women,
wow.
Right? So the thing is that there is historical wounds and psychic wounds around infant feeding in our community that's like in our bodies, right? And so for us, when we reclaim breastfeeding, it's like a reproductive right, but it's also like a radical act for us to really reclaim this. And so for us, we think about it in community. First Foods Justice is about like infant milk, like breast milk as a first food. Like that's the first food that we come in contact with, and every infant should have access to it. And that's how we think about this. And so, formula is there. It's a resort, it's an option if we need it, but it's not the first one that we go to. We really teach people about what their bodies can do, and then create the supports necessary for them to actually sustain breastfeeding. Because in this country, we can say, oh, people should breastfeed, but think about what we do to people.
Right.
10 days after you have a baby, they want you to go back to work.
Yes, indeed.
Right?
And then they make it also difficult for you to be able to breastfeed sometimes.
Even at work, right? They got you in a totoilet and you're like, okay, I'm here in the stall, like breastfeeding, like I need a room, right? And so there are laws. There's a Pump Act was put in place that was put in place last year that really looked at discrimination for people who are breastfeeding, but also making sure that there's adequate spaces for you to breastfeed when you're at work and things like that, and pumping at work. Yeah.
See, progress is slow, but it's happening.
It's happening.
Okay. So I do love the idea of celebrating the wins, but also being quite aware of things that are being taken from us and what we need to do to try to ensure that we can continue to have control over our bodies. Because like you said, our bodies still belong to us.
Our bodies belong to us.
All right.
And that is a theme.
Listen, is there anything that we didn't mention that you want to make sure we talk about as we're gearing up for Black Maternal Health Week?
Oh, my goodness. I feel like we talked about a lot of things. I mean, I can just say one thing, which is that we do have the Mama Glow Doula Homeschool professional training program coming back again this June.
Okay.
It's virtual. If you want to join us, please do.
Mamaglow.com.
Mamaglow.com and sign up. It's going to be an amazing training. Even if you're not interested in becoming a doula so that you can go out into the world professionally, if you just want this information so that you can be better, receive better health care, understand like what's happening to our bodies. If you want to do this, I know people who come because they're pregnant and they just want the information. But also, if you want to be a professional, this is a place to go. This training is the only one of its kind that's embedded in an Ivy League university that's centering Black women and marginalized people, and of a Black female-led company. So we're here to really do the work. So join us. We would love to see you there. But also join us at the Soft Space. If you're in Brooklyn and in person, come see us because there's so much fun stuff happening there. We have stuff for men too.
Oh, yes. And I saw that too, men, as far as even mental health.
Yep.
You know, a space to be able to feel comfortable
Yeah.
and connect with others.
Exactly.
As well. Just great, important conversations happening. You're always doing the good work.
So are you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, Latham Thomas, thank you. Oh, and I got some gifts here.
Yes.
Let's not forget that because you never come without a gift.
Oh,
Show
you
me
know I
what
come with the
this
gift.
is.
Okay, so a couple things. The first one is a manifestation guidebook and deck from Aliza Kelly, who is an amazing astrologer. I love her.
There are no coincidences.
Right? She's amazing.
Even if I think about how we met, it was not a coincidence.
Right?
Johnny Nunez introduced us.
Which was amazing,
and then
right?
we definitely kept in contact after that.
Okay, we gotta have some fun. So we got the 21 seeds, grapefruit and hibiscus tequila.
I cannot wait to try this. I have the cucumber and I think jalapeno at home, but this I
is the
love
bomb
grapefruit.
because Paloma. It's
Okay.
Paloma season.
Paloma.
Right, it's about to be spring, so that's that. And then I had to get you matching mala beads. These are the Mama Glow mala beads that we have, which are semi-precious stones.
Look at how beautiful this is.
Aren't they pretty?
I love this. All right, let's do it.
Yes, and here's your little sachet for them.
Well, thank you so much again, Latham Thomas. And I know you'll be coming in and checking in with me.
Of course,
frequently.
absolutely.
And I'll be at the soft space.
Can't wait.
All right, make sure you guys
Thank
follow
you.
her. She is founder of Mama Glow and the Mama Glow Foundation.